And welcome to Making Music, which is what we like to do here. Today, we are very honored to have Mr. Peter Daddario.
Thank you.
From Daddario Strings to talk to us about his excellent product, what which you just heard, on his fine ovation guitar that comes from the factory with EXPs on it, my favorite acoustic string. And we'll get right into it here. I've been saying Daddario, just like it reads, for years, but that's not the correct pronunciation. It's
Daddario, actually, and that's a common thing. Most folks actually say Daddario and replace that apostrophe with an I, but in fact it's Daddario, like Hi-Ho Daddario, Farmer in the Dell.
Ah.
Like the old children's nursery rhyme.
Well, now I'll know how to remember that.
But we like any customers that say our name, whatever way they want to say it.
However they say it, as long as they're laying the cash on the product. Excellent. So tell me a little bit, because it's a family-run business still. How long has this been going on?
Gosh, there's a lot of family history. And going back 9 generations to the 1800s, early 1800s in Sale, Italy, my ancestors were making strings for violin, viola, cello out of sheep gut in Italy. And in the early 1900s, my great-grandfather came over to the United States, to Astoria, Queens, and settled in Queens, and brought the string-making business with him to New York and began making strings in Queens. Under different brand names at the time, he partnered with Ladislav Kaplan and made Kaplan violin strings. And the business continued to grow, and it was really out of his basement in his apartment in Queens.
Wow.
As he raised the next generation of Daddarios, he taught them how to make strings in the 50s and 60s. They were always making strings under different brand names. They made the Martin strings for a long time, and Darko strings were made by the Daddario family for a long time. And in 1974, the Daddario brand of strings started itself, and that was started by my grandfather, John Daddario Sr., and my 2 uncles, Jim Daddario and John Daddario, who both are still heavily involved in the business today.
Very cool.
It's been an amazing journey, and Daddario started in 1974, so now we're getting towards 25 years of Daddario branded strings, and the company's grown tremendously, and we've been very fortunate.
Yeah, I know. The first time I used them, and it was right around that 74, 75 time frame. I was just very impressed, and I have to be honest, on occasion I've put other brands of strings on my guitars, but I always go, probably shouldn't have done that, because they always have been very balanced, good treble, nice ring, lots of bottom end. I really like them.
Well, that's great. I mean, when we first came out and started in the 70s, we did a couple things that were different. We were the first folks to use phosphor bronze. So traditionally, guitar strings, acoustic guitar strings were made out of brass or 80-20 bronze. And Jim Daddario, in experimenting with different alloys, found that phosphor bronze created a warmer, mellower sound. And those became known as Daddario's acoustic guitar string. And they really took off right away. And folks like yourself and lots of acoustic guitar players that tried those phosphor bronze fell in love with them right away.
Yeah. So Daddario how big a company is this at this point?
Well, at this point, it's quite large. It's really more than just strings. We have several brands now. We have Planet Waves, which is our musical instrument accessories for guitar. And we also have Evans Drumheads, which is obviously drumheads for all kinds of drums. HQ Percussion, which is percussion practice pads and percussion accessories. And then we also have Daddario bowed instrument strings, as well as Rico, which we've just gotten involved with, which is reeds and mouthpieces. So the company has grown, tremendously over the last few years, and it's really gotten to be, in the last 10 years, more than just strings. It's really about all kinds of musical instrument accessories.
Yeah. And one thing that a couple of guys I work with are kind of being very militantly patriotic. The company still manufactures the strings in New York, correct?
Absolutely. Every string is made in the United States. Most of the raw materials come from the U.S., but our strings are wound in Farmingdale, New York, which is on Long Island, about 30 miles from Manhattan. And we make about 350,000 strings per day in the factory there in New York. It's quite remarkable, but yes, everything is made in the United States, and we're very proud of that.
Yay. Well, yeah, keep the money here, keep the jobs here. You
Yes.
have over almost 1,000 people working for your company?
Internationally now, there's probably about 800 or 900 in our New York facility, but also in the other facilities around the country where we have sales and marketing offices, and some of the Rico reeds and mouthpieces are made out in California. We have a little over 1,000 employees total now.
Good sized company.
Good sized
And
company.
you growing up in the business, how did that play? Obviously you liked it because you're still there.
Yes, obviously. I grew up a little bit outside the business because it was really my two uncles that owned the company and ran the company. And I grew up in New England and went to college, but I would come down during the summers and do some work in the factory. I worked in receiving for a summer, just receiving in boxes, worked in the shipping department for a while, packing orders, worked building shelves, and when we moved into our new facility in 1994. So before, when I was younger, I got a lot of practical experience working a lot of different parts of the business. And it's just been exciting to watch it grow over the years.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah.
And now you're doing the OEM side.
Right. So in the mid 90s, I came on board and started doing some marketing. I did artist relations for a long time. Being 24 years old and being in New York and having the opportunity to go hear all these great musicians in New York City 3 or 4 nights a week was obviously a great thing. I had a great time seeing all of my idols and meeting some of them, which was tremendous.
And they were happy to see you because you were bringing them the strings that they liked.
Surprisingly, they didn't realize how much more happier I was to see them, but they were happy to see me too. And I got to meet a lot of great people and do a lot of great things. And then from there, I've moved on to do other marketing, advertising, and now sales.
Yeah. So OEM, I'm sure some of our viewers understand that, but it's original equipment manufacturers,
Exactly.
the acronym. And that means, like, for instance, Ovation uses your strings as your strings. Mm-hmm. But there are vendors that also, and this is something I wasn't really aware of, that just because there's a brand name on the string doesn't mean those people actually made them. You do a lot of manufacturing for other string vendors as well.
Yes, sir. That information is very proprietary, but at the same time, it's well known that there are 40, 50, 60 brands of strings out there in the world, and really only a handful of manufacturers. I like to equate it to detergent, to laundry detergent, where you go to the store and look on the shelves, there's 15 brands of laundry detergent, which are pretty much all made in the same factory under different formulas.
Yeah.
So yes, we do make strings for other manufacturers, and at times those are the other manufacturers' formulas that we're using their formulas to make the strings for them.
So they are different than the Daddario in some ways.
In some cases, yes.
But they still have the same quality of wrap.
Absolutely. And still done on our winding machines, which are computer controlled, and that's why they come to us. A lot of folks have machinery that's outdated, and we have excellent string making machinery and engineers, 6 full-time engineers that work on the machinery at all times.
There were some strings that I used to use and the companies went out of business because of their lack of consistency. You'd buy a pack of strings and you'd have different tension than you were expecting, or the wraps would come loose. And so obviously Daddario, making the investment in the computer controlled, has really maintained the consistency you've always had.
It's funny because when you think about an instrument, you think about handmade, and handmade is a great thing. A lot of the fine acoustic guitars, a lot of the finer instruments in the world are handmade. When it comes to strings, that's a disadvantage. When it comes to instruments, perhaps that's an advantage. When it comes to strings, it's a disadvantage. Everything that we do is computer controlled. It's precise. That's why we get a consistent product every time. Every time we wind a string, the core wire is moving at the same speed. The wrap wire is it's the same number of wraps. It's a really consistent, precise process, and that's why we're able to get the consistency.
I was out at your website the other day, and you have a clip out there that our viewers, if you go out to www.daddario.com, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later, but there's a very interesting video on how the strings are actually made. I was interested in that your materials, when they come through the door, have this process of testing the tension to make sure that they have the right tensile strength and right elasticity, because they have to stretch some.
Absolutely.
And also is showing that process. And that, you think of computer, there's a guy there who's actually monitoring the process of every string, and he starts the process. So there's still a person watching this thing. It's not just push a button and strings come out the back.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Quality control is extremely important for us. You can only imagine what one bad spool of wire might do. I mean, one bad spool of wire might make 1,000 strings and ruin 1,000 string sets. So when we receive a box of wire in, we take the spools and we test each one for elasticity, tension, breaking point, all those kind of things. And it's very, very important that the raw materials, again, can make a lot. If the raw materials were be bad, you can make a lot of bad product, and that could be a really bad thing. So
Yeah.
I think a big part of our consistency is the testing we do on the raw materials when they come in, for sure.
So I've noticed that we've got new products coming out like EXP over the last 25 years. What kind of changes have you seen in string technology?
Well, we've obviously had some tremendous changes in the factory itself with the way the strings are wound, going from, initially, and this is probably going back more than 25 years, but strings, the core wire, as you wrap the wrap wire around a core wire, it used to be a hand crank that would spin. Now that's 100% computer controlled. So in the manufacturing process has been a lot of great things, but there's been a lot of technology in just the packaging of the strings. In 1992, we partnered with Bell Labs and came up with this corrosion intercept technology, which is a corrosion-proof bag for your strings. So we seal six strings in one bag, and that is a full set of strings right there.
Yeah.
And you could take that set of strings and put it on the shelf for 20 years and open it 20 years from now, and it'll be as fresh as the day they're made.
Which is good, because I always have a spare set of EXPs in my guitar case, and I never use them because I just take a fresh set off the store shelf at the Guitar Showcase when I'm restringing my guitar. So I've got a set there, it's probably 6 years old.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about them going bad at all. And at the same time as we came out with this, we came out with, there had to be a way for musicians to know which string was which. So we have come out with color-coded Bolands, which obviously has become a Daddario trademark. All strings previous to this were made with brass Bolands. In order for people to differentiate and know which strings are which, we put color coding on the Bolands there.
Oh, very cool.
So you'll know, you can look on the bag and know that the green Boland is for the 3rd string, the black one is for the 4th string, etc.
So 6th string, 5th string,
Exactly.
with the red. Black is 4th.
That's right. Green is the 3rd.
3rd. Purple, my wife's favorite color, 2nd. And then silver or chrome for 1st.
I'll tell you a funny aside about these. Since we've started using these Bolands, we get lots of requests from jewelry manufacturers. People like to make beaded necklaces. People like to do all that kind of stuff with the Bolands. So we actually end up selling a lot of these Bolands as raw materials to jewelry makers over the years.
Maybe I should be keeping my strings and reselling them after they're done.
Exactly. But this has been a really big revolutionary change in the way that strings were packaged. We were the first ones to do this. A lot of our competitors have imitated this over the years. This bag was originally designed by Bell Labs during the first Gulf War. When they shipped parts over to Iraq, since it was so hot and so humid over there, they needed something corrosion-proof to put the different parts, screws, nuts and bolts, those kind of things, and they used this kind of technology. And then Bell Labs approached us with this and said, maybe this would be a good idea for guitar strings, and we jumped on it right away. Certainly, it increased the cost of making the product, but it certainly increased the durability and the longevity of the product.
And a lot of guitar players like myself will buy a box of strings, and it's nice to know that that box of strings, which when I'm playing a lot, on my acoustic guitars, about once a month I'll change the strings, even with the EXPs.
Right.
But still, that's a year. And traditionally, with the other technology, in a year-old string, it's going to be a little bit corroded. It's not going to be as fresh.
Absolutely.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing.
And less packaging, so it's better for the environment as well.
That's a good point. When we first came out with it, we called it the E series for environmental packaging. What we did was eliminate a traditional string pack like this ukulele set that we have here. Traditionally, strings were packaged with a vinyl pouch.
Yeah.
And then a paper insert. And then the ukulele has 4 strings, but normally 6 strings in 6 individual paper envelopes. A lot of wasted materials.
We get a shot of this here. So, yeah. So there's all that packaging.
And now we're just down to a recycled cardboard pouch, a corrosion bag, and that's it.
Yeah.
So we definitely cut back a lot on the materials being used, and musicians being environmentalists really appreciated that.
Well, some of them, but
yeah.
The ones I play with anyway.
Many, let's
I'm
put it
glad
that
you
way.
brought the ukulele strings, because that's something, as an aside, ukuleles, we used to carry 1 at Christmas time.
Right.
And now we've got probably 20 hanging on the wall. It's amazing how many people are picking up the ukulele again.
It really is amazing, isn't it? It's really exploded in the last few years. We were very fortunate to have one of the virtuosos in the ukulele world come to us named Jake Shimabukuro, who is a Hawaiian, a younger gentleman, a tremendous player, and he came to us and said, you know, I like your ukulele strings, but I've been using your classical guitar strings on my ukulele. You should come out with a ukulele set that is, you know, based on your classical guitar strings. So we've come out with Pro Arte ukulele strings in the last couple of years,
cool.
which has been really good.
Yeah.
So just talking about other advancements in the last 25 years, certainly in addition to the packaging, in addition to the computer control winding process and tightening up the entire process, we've experimented with different windings over the years, that we've experimented with cryogenics, we've experimented with several different things, different alloys, and we've really been able to really refine the process in the last 25 years and really make it more consistent and better, and making better strings today than we ever were making better strings each day.
Yeah, and
is fun.
You know, you and I were talking about that earlier today, about how the vendors that are really succeeding are not the vendors that are looking how to squeeze more profit out, but are actually improving the product, charging a little bit more for it, but even though the strings might be a little bit more expensive, you get a better value. Like the EXPs, this is a new technology. There's another vendor, that came out and made a big splash about coating their strings, you know, which is supposed to make them last longer.
Right.
Unfortunately, the way they did it, for my taste, they took all the sound out as well. But you did something a little bit different with these. Could you talk to me about that?
Yeah, we did. A traditional guitar string is really just a core wire with a ball end attached to it and a wrap wire. What our competitors had come out with was a coating process where they took a wound string. They don't manufacture strings. They purchase strings from a vendor and then put a coating over the string and coat the entire string, which will fill the gaps in the windings with coating, and it sometimes can deaden the tone a little bit. We thought it through and really realized that what's important is protecting the bronze wire, protecting the wrap wire. People will change acoustic guitar strings because the bronze or the brass or the 80/20 bronze wire will wear out on them and will go dead, will tarnish and rust. What we found was if we were to protect just the bronze wire and coat this bronze wrap wire first and then wind the string, we'll have protected the string from corrosion and tarnish, but we'll still be letting the string breathe and vibrate to its natural tonality. So what you end up with the EXP is a longer lasting string that sounds very much close to an uncoated string, but lasts 3 to 4 times longer than an uncoated string.
Yeah.
And we've been tremendously successful with these. We've expanded the line to electric bass, classical guitar, both phosphor bronze and 80/20 bronze acoustic guitar strings, and mandolin. So it's been a really successful line that continues to grow for us.
Well, it's what I actually have on. No, actually, that's not true, and we're going to fix that a little bit later. But these aren't EXPs, and they sound pretty dead. And if I'd been thinking when I got up this morning, I would have brought my Yamaha in, which has 6-month-old EXPs, and sound way more lively than these 1-month-old other brand strings. So
that's great to hear.
I'm definitely converted to them. To be honest, the regular series of strings, and this is a new, we'll talk about this in a second,
Sure.
but the regular packaging strings, non-coated, are slightly brighter out of the box, but deteriorate much faster.
That's right.
So I've gone to say, well, this sounds a little bit like week-old strings, but they sound like that for 4 months.
We have an acoustic engineer named Fan Tao who works at our company who actually went to Cal State and was an engineer there. He is a classically trained violinist, but he also does all kinds of acoustical engineering for us. And what he's done is some really interesting tests on uncoated versus coated strings versus other brands of coated strings. And what we basically found out is that if an uncoated string is at 100% of volume, our EXP coated strings start out at about 90%. Where some of our competitors' coated strings might come in at about 50 or 60%. So,
that
yes,
explains some things.
Yes, the coating certainly does take a little bit of the tone away, but what we found in this process that we're doing, where we're coating the wrap wire first, it's only taking away about 10% of that tone, and again, then that tone will stay pretty level, whereas an uncoated string might start at 100% and go like this. The EXPs might start at 90% and stay level for a very long time, then slowly fade.
Yeah, and I have friends, and this is something that I learned early in my career, but it was surprising to me that because everybody has different body chemistries. I have some friends that have very corrosive chemicals when they play. I have a friend of mine who can put brand new strings on his guitar, and by the end of the first set, they sound like my EXPs at
Right.
3 months.
Right.
You know, so the coating strings have really helped him in that.
That's great. I've had folks come to me and say, you know, I really like the EXPs right out of the box because they sound like my uncoated strings after I've broken them in for a couple hours, and then they last me longer too.
Yeah.
Which is great. I was at I traveled to a lot of festivals and events that we sponsor, and I was at the Bluegrass Music Association show, and this guy came into our booth and said, "You watch me, I'll kill a set of mandolin strings in 15 minutes." And I said, "Okay, here you go." I gave him a set of uncoated mandolin strings. He strung up his mandolin. 15 minutes later, the thing was purple. The strings were purple and tarnished. I said, "Okay, great. Why don't we try that with a set of EXPs and see what happens?" He says, "Oh, I'll tarnish these. I'll ruin these just like I ruined those." He tried in 15 minutes. They still looked pretty darn good, and they still sounded pretty good, and gained a customer for life there.
Yeah. So, which, you know, to me, does that make these your most popular strings?
In terms of sales volume, they're not, just because they're a higher end item, but they're certainly our top quality string, and are very much gaining popularity over the years. We're seeing tremendous increases in coated strings as uncoated strings remain fairly level.
Yeah. Well, you know, again, more expensive, but better value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're going to pay, you know, twice as much, you might get 3 or 4 times the amount of life out of them. And I think people who try them, maybe they're skeptical at first. Gee, boy, $16 for a set of guitar strings, that seems like that's a lot of money, and it is, but it's really worth it if you're not going to have to change them again for 3 or 4
Sure,
months.
it's the same reason why people buy, you know, a $30,000 hybrid instead of a $15,000 commuter car,
Right.
because in the first year, your gas makes up the difference.
Right. We like to make the comparison with guitar strings to razor blades sometimes too.
Yeah, well, I don't have that, you know, that analogy doesn't
That
work
might
for
be
me.
lost on you, right?
Okay, so, and we've talked to, we have a list of questions, because I really, you know, get somebody from the family, let alone from the company. I wanted to make sure I covered everything. So what kind of questions do people normally ask you about strings?
Well, we get a lot of simple questions of people asking, why do my strings go dead? What can I do to get longer life out of my strings? You know, can I boil my strings to get longer life? We get lots of questions.
I used to do for my bass.
And it does work on basses.
For a short while.
Yeah, for a short while. They tend to go dead fairly quickly afterwards. We get a lot of questions about that. We get a lot of questions about what kind of, you know, what do the different alloys do? How do the different alloys react? Why should I use stainless steel versus nickel and bronze versus phosphor bronze
Which
and all
is
those
a
things?
question why?
Yeah. Well, every alloy, you know, again, a guitar string in its most basic form is really a steel core wire with a wrap wire wrapped around it. The alloy you choose for that wrap wire is going to determine the tone of the strings. And acoustic strings, 80-20 bronze is considered a bright, louder, a bright alloy, and gives you that kind of bright tone, whereas phosphor bronze is warmer in a mellower tone. With nickel, or with electric guitar strings, we have both nickel and stainless steel. Stainless steel is a brighter tone, nickel is a bit of a mellower tone.
Okay.
Then we can get into other kinds of alloys, like not so much different alloys, but polishing, like we do with our flat wound strings. We have some flat tops for acoustic guitar, which are semi-polished phosphor bronze that provide a real mellow tone. We have chromes for electric guitar, which are flat wound strings that have been ribbon wound with stainless steel. And
Is that kind of, okay, so it's a flat?
it's a flat wire. It's a flat wire that wraps around the string that gives it a really smooth, mellow tone and feel. So the different alloys that you use on the strings, classical guitar strings, we use silver-plated copper. The different alloy that you might use will create the tone.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Lots of folks don't know, really. They say, oh, acoustic guitar strings, but there actually are different kinds.
Sure, and I love it when somebody comes, I need some strings. I go, what kind? I don't know. You know, well, then we start talking about, well, is it a slot head? Is it electric? Oh, yeah, it's electric. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm, right.
What kind of music do you listen to? And be able to give them the right strings.
Sure.
We talked about your website briefly. You guys do something that I find kind of unique. A lot of manufacturers have videos and stuff about their products, why buy my products. You guys devote a lot of web space to how to be a better instrumentalist, how to be a better musician. I saw one today. It's a really interesting website. I don't know if we've got that queued up to, there it is. It comes up and immediately you've got somebody well-known talking about their craft or playing music. And unfortunately, I didn't recognize the bass player I saw this afternoon, but he had the most amazing technique, which I'm going to incorporate and steal from him. Obviously, he wants me to. And in the lower left-hand corner of this screen, there's a whole how-to section about, you know, how to maintain your guitar, how to do jazz comping, all this stuff for free.
Yeah.
It's just really wonderful.
I think education is extremely important. You know, really a focus for our company here in the last few years. Educating the consumer and being not only just being a manufacturer of product and someone who sells something to the consumer, but also educating that consumer and being part of the music community. We have lots of great stuff on our website, like you said, techniques for how to play, how to string instruments. Sure, there are product demos like everybody has.
Well, there was a great video, Liz Farr, who's an amazing guitarist, didn't play anything, but just talked about how she's been using Daddario since she was a child.
Right.
Because somebody said, try these strings. And she went, wow, these are great, which is kind of how they ended up on all my acoustic guitars.
Yeah, those kind of testimonials are wonderful, and we do have quite a few of those. But like you said, a lot of the educational stuff out there is pretty neat. We'll show children, not children, anybody, how to tune a guitar, how to restring a guitar, how to restring a string through body.
Yeah.
People come home with their new instruments and they don't know, you know, what they're doing. And we can go to the website and educate them.
And that's something that we do at our store at Guitar Showcase as well. And we have run out of time, which is, you know, we were worried about not having enough.
Wow.
Thank you, Peter. We really appreciate you coming out here.
Thank you very much for having me.
We appreciate having your strings, the Daddario string family. Okay, and let's listen to
play a little more for us.
A little bit more with the
beautiful
Bolands
strings
here.